Welcome back to the Single Man Chef. I'm Grant, and we're gonna start actually cooking some stuff instead of just going on and on and on about it. But before we do that, one little interlude. I'm gonna talk to you about wine just for a second, and I'm gonna introduce new bottles of wine every time I cook something. Okay? So right now, I'm gonna show you what I'm drinking. This is a little wine called Diabolica. It's a rosé. And I know some of you guys out there is thinking, oh my God, a pink wine? I would never drink that. Why not? It tastes great. And I swear to God, you don't have to put a little cocktail umbrella in it. It's all right. You can enjoy it. It tastes delicious. And while we're at it, I want to dispense with one wine-related bullshit item right now. Screw tops. I still hear people turning up their nose at screw top wine. You know what? 25 years ago, they were right. Because a screw top usually went with one of those big jug handles on the side. We all drank that kind of wine when we were in college or whatever. Yes, I agree with you, then it was bad. Now, it's actually economical and it's good for the environment to use screw tops. Now, they form just as good a seal as a cork does, okay? And cork is increasingly hard to come by. It's made from this tree that really only grows well in Spain. And when you're harvesting things from trees, there's a limited amount that can be had. And it can do a great deal of environmental damage if you just rely on that one thing. So forget about screw tops versus corks. And so many people don't even know how to properly cork a bottle of wine anyways. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but for now, enjoy the screw top. It's easy, and it doesn't matter if you forgot your corkscrew. You're still good to go. This is a very nice wine. Okay? Little word about what people are doing when they're doing this. Okay? They're not just showing off. Couple things they're doing. First of all, they're aerating the wine. When you introduce more oxygen into something, it tastes better. Okay? I don't know all the science behind how your taste buds work, and I wouldn't presume to explain it. But I do know that there's a lot involved in oxygenation and the way oxygen relates to the molecules in your food or your wine. Okay? So the more oxygen you introduced, the more you'll taste. So that's one thing you're doing when you're swirling the wine like that. Another thing you're doing, and I don't know how good a view you can get, is you're looking at the meniscus. You see all those little droppy lines around the edge of the glass? Okay? The more you see about that, the better the wine you have. I think. Not always, but it's kind of a crude rule of thumb for me. Is if you see that, it means the wine isn't watery, right? It means there's a lot of substance to it. Okay? And when you have that sort of thick layer between the wine and the air, which is essentially just what meniscus is a fancy word for, there's something good trapped underneath that layer, right? And the first way you can find out if it's good is you can smell it. And like, you laugh at people when they do this, but there's a reason why they do it. You stick your nose in it. And then they rattle off a whole bunch of things. Oh, it tastes like a barnyard in mid-April, with the accounts half done. I don't know how to describe it. It's mostly fruit metaphors I can use. I don't know too many other things to describe it with. But I know if it smells good or if it doesn't smell good. Now, sometimes it doesn't smell good, but it tastes even better. And we'll talk about that later when we start talking about Pinot Noirs, okay? But this one tastes good, trust me. All right, so we got our wine going. Now we're ready to cook some pasta. First thing I'm going to talk about before we put any noodles in the water is the concept of al dente. Okay. I'm going to explain to you the kind of noodles that I'm using for this pasta. I was saying spaghetti earlier, but what I'm really using for this one is linguine. A linguine noodle is flat and thin. Why do you think I might choose that over spaghetti? Well, a flat surface will carry more of any sort of sauce that's placed on it more efficiently. whereas a tubular surface like spaghetti might just slide right through it. Linguine carries more flavor on its surface. So that's why I prefer to use it. And it's fun like spaghetti. You can twirl it around on your fork. It's good that way. So that's what I'm using this time. Now, when I talk about al dente, what do I mean? Al dente, literally translated in Italian, means to the teeth. And it means that you undercook the spaghetti or whatever pasta you're using just a little bit. Why? Isn't undercooking bad? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, undercooking is not bad for practically everything with the exception of chicken and pork. Because you can get diseases from undercooking chicken and pork. But undercooking most other types of protein, fish, things like pasta, is almost never a bad thing. Okay? Why? Because you're leaving more of the flavor in it. When you overcook it, you leach flavor out of it. And you see that when you've overcooked pasta, you take the pasta out of the water and you see a thick sort of cloudy, congealed mess in there. That's all the starch and correspondingly the flavor that you leached out of that pasta by overcooking it. That pasta could have stayed with a lot of that flavor if you'd taken it out at the right time. Now, what's another mistake that people make with pasta is they can't wait for the water to boil, because watching things boil is frustrating. They dump it in too quickly. And they dump it into cooler water, and then again, that starch starts to leach out of it. And it's just as bad as overcooking it. It's terrible for it. Wait until it boils. Then you can put it in there. And another thing that I do with my pasta is I try and introduce as much flavor into the water that I'm making it in as soon as possible. So I like to put a little bit of chicken stock in there. Other people will put some olive oil and some salt. That's good too. Anything that introduces more flavor early on. And this holds true for rice as well. Don't just follow the strict recipe of, oh, I'm just going to boil everything in water. Water is boring. It's everywhere. Besides, fish fucking it. You don't want that stuff on your food. Trust me, use some other stuff. Use some chicken stock. Use some olive oil and salt. It makes it more interesting. You'll notice. Now, let's shift over to the stovetop. Guerrilla filmmaking, I know. Oh, I got a nice boil going on there. So it's obviously time to get my pasta in there. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to break it. Because if it's sticking out of the pot, it ain't cooking. Now, one thing you're going to notice about this series is that I don't talk about portions. The only thing I'm going to talk about is proportions, which means how much sauce should I use versus how much pasta. That's something I will talk about, but it's always a rough rule of thumb. I don't say use 2 cups of this versus this or whatever, because a lot of chefs actually don't do that. They think it's crap, and so do I. Go by feel. What seems right at the time. So I've dropped my pasta in there. Then I'm going to continue to stir it a lot. Okay? Now you notice I've got a pan right next to my pasta. This is where I'm going to start my sauce. And it's also where I'm going to finish my pasta once it's al dente. Okay? But which one do you think I should worry about getting finished first? This one. Because if this one boils, I can just let it sit for a while. I can pour a little bit of olive oil on it, maybe some salt, and I can just let it be. I can let this one finish, and then when the sauce is ready, I can dump the pasta in. Okay? That's the way the sequence should work. You do it the other way around, it's not going to work out. So already, because I got a nice hot head on this, my noodles are getting nice and soft, right? Which is why you have to wait for it to boil. Wait, okay? And if you hate waiting, remember, there's always wine. So part 2 of this is going to be the sauce. Stay tuned.